Hi, I'm Mecca Williams. This is Afrikana's 5th anniversary, and I am moderating Brothers Y'all All Right? Talk for Men and Mental Health, and these film directors, these with the films that we're screening today, it's all about men and mental health and trauma. So I look forward to having this conversation. And welcome to Africana 5th year anniversary. Hey y'all.
Hey,
How you doing?
Yeah, so I'm a little nervous because I'm like, this is a lot.
girl, you look just fine. You look good.
Yeah. Anyways, I want to know, did you all see each other's film? I know that Lori, you saw what did you see? You saw some of Nakia's
I
film.
I saw Howard's film, Sick Boys
Okay.
Die Young. I
Okay.
saw Men Listen. Just a few. I think it was a 3 minute. Is it a trailer or some sort, like a promo?
Yes.
I tried to look for Back. I didn't see anything about Back, but yeah.
Okay. So you were trying to do your research.
Yeah, I just trying to do my research to see, what other guys, other people are making, because I love film a lot. I like storytelling. That's
Yep.
my thing. I like not just a good story, but the way a film is told is what interests me a lot more. This is why I like short films, because like I find my favorite short filmmakers are on Vimeo and YouTube. I find them like I think they are more daring. They want to try things, go a bit crazy. That's the kind of films I like to make myself.
So speaking of your film, I want to get into that a little bit. So if you could tell us the Zimbabwe language, what's the name of the film? In your
Okay,
language.
okay. In my language, the language is called Shona. It is called
Okay.
Muroi Indiani, right? It just means who is the witch. So I just because when I was young, okay, I grew up. I was epileptic, all right, but nobody knew that I was. There was no diagnosis. There was no way of knowing. So I think it was just like maybe I had different symptoms, I should say. So it was a mystery. So because of my background, you tried doctors, you tried religion, you tried witchcraft, you tried anything to find out. I think my parents and my relatives are trying to find out what is wrong with this child. So I'll just sort of just a brief insight into what happened to me when I was young.
Okay, so when I was watching your film, the whole time I was on the edge of my seat because as a therapist, I was like, "What's going on here?" At first, I thought I knew what it was. Then, as time went on, I was like, "Oh, he's having seizures." And then
Yeah.
I continued to watch it. I was like, "Well, maybe I'm off because maybe it's something else going on." Because I mean, he's not in the United States. Maybe I'm unfamiliar. Then when you said disclosed, you were having epilepsy seizures, what affected your behavior. And then finally you got some treatment and help. What I also found interesting about towards the end of your film, you talked about the support that you had with your parents and your friends, which was instrumental,
That's
which
right.
was missing in the other film dynamics, the support and the across the board with everyone's film. There's some cultural barriers. I want you all to talk about cultural barriers that prevent Black people, Black men in particular, from getting help and having the help that they need.
I'll start.
Okay.
Sorry.
Elegance.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest barriers for Black folks Black men in particular getting mental health is the fact that not really allowed to express pain or to admit that pain is actually impeding us from doing the things that we want to do in life. Like you're raised to, I remember as a kid, it was like I could never cry if something bad happened to me. And the moment I cry, I'd be like, well, I'll give you something to cry about. So you kind of swallow these traumas one after the other. And after a certain point, being sick becomes normal. And yeah, that's my opinion of one of the barriers is that you're not allowed to really express that you are facing difficulty in any capacity, let alone that which is happening between, in one's mind.
Okay.
I'd also like to add on to that. I think a lot of
Black families rely on the church for a lot of emotional and social issues, like, one-on-one meetings with the pastor and things like that. And, within the church, there's a patriarchal system and expectation put on all the men and in turn all the boys of the church. And so we're internalizing that. We're going to this environment every Sunday, and we're hearing these ideas thrown at us. No one's questioning it. We're in a place of total authority, and so we're being told, our problems can be solved with prayer. Our problems can be solved if you read the Bible, this wouldn't happen to you. And so then you're blaming yourself for your problems. So I would just say, the church has its own effect. I mean, there are some people who find positivity through it and through the counseling, but I think a lot of the more marginalized people, queer people, they're not finding that comfort there.
Okay. Thank you.
That's good.
And Lori, you was about to say something, Lori, about the barrier.
Oh yeah, about the barrier. I think speaking to some people who are not African, who have watched my film, they're really surprised by what I went through. Like, why did I go through all of this? Okay, and I do agree that it happens I'll talk about Zimbabwe. It happens in Zimbabwe as well, that you are supposed to be tough, all right? And then people we tend to let's say in terms of witchcraft, right? It's something that no one talks about. People do go through it, right? But you keep quiet, because it's embarrassing, and you're supposed to go to church. You know what I mean, right? Of which church, there's so many different, or let's say versions, I should say, all right. And also, I agree. I think about men, we are supposed to be tough. Now with what I know now, it seems daft, right? But growing up, it was embarrassing for me. Like, I'm going through this, and I just felt so embarrassed. You know what I mean? So this is why, like you pointed out, that I trusted my friends a lot more, because it started when I was about 8 years old. So they knew this is what happened to Lawrence. So they sort of knew how to just take me home and let me sleep. That is what used to happen. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of when you say you felt embarrassed, that a lot of that comes from, I don't fit into the norm, right?
Too right.
Not like everyone else. And that goes back to Jovan and Elegance film, Buck. That the character in that film, it appeared that he was struggling too with his mental health and was ashamed, and did not feel like he fit into the norm until the end of the film, when he got with the friend who had a medical condition. And then at that point, that vulnerability allowed them to connect.
Yeah. That's the other thing too, is that, the system of white supremacy in America, particularly, this rugged individualism, the idea that people can be islands onto themselves, and that if you're not able to find success on your own, then there's something wrong with you. But in reality, community is the mechanism through which all social change, all civilization occurs. So for me, when our lead character, Lynn, meets Harris and discovers that there are other people who have to take pills every day in order to remain healthy, then all of a sudden he has the ground zero with which to start to think about what a healthy life could look like.
Exactly.
Yes. And depression is a very isolating, feeling. It's isolating disease that makes you feel like you're the only one. So your actions will reflect that. You will spend more time by yourself. You will not want to talk to people. You may, explore more self-destructive activities, just to get rid of a sense of numbness. So, I think just meeting someone who's sort of engaging with you on a very intimate level, not judging you, that's what allows him to open up in a way that you didn't see him open up the rest of the film.
Exactly. Speaking of numbness, that will bring me to another point. So in all the films, and when I say all the films, with the exception of Who is the Witch, I would say Buck, Sick Boys Die Alone, and Man Listen, there was a running theme of drug and alcohol use. to numb, suppress, and to escape. So I want you to talk about that a little bit, Howard, the drug and alcohol use in your film. Your character really was not for it, was not trying to use, but everybody in his life was using, and which gravely impacted him and his outcome. Why did you decide to as a primary thing in the film?
I think that's unfortunately a big part of, some people's lives that do deal with mental health. Sometimes, well, I believe we're all a product of our environment, and, like nature, nurture shapes us. So sometimes, if it's our families, if it's our parents or friends around that are abusing, or you grow up dealing with this, it's kind of two options. You're either going to turn to that too, or you're going to try your best to stay away. So it was important for me to show that for my character, that this is a kid who, his mother was on terrible drugs and he didn't have a dad. So he made the decision for himself to try his best to go a certain route in life. But as we all know, sometimes, and when you're dealing with mental health, sometimes it's life, you can't really control some things and it could still go wrong. So that's kind of what happened.
In the situation with your character, it was really sad and it was hard to watch certain scenes because of it was out of your control. You needed somewhere to live. You thought that these people in your life were going to protect you as in the character. Different people, the expectation were they were going to protect you, and it wasn't happening. It was like everywhere you turn, it was nowhere to go. Even the scenes in the hospital, there was no protection there. You met a girl and she's getting violated, and there's nothing you can do about it. It seemed like it was almost like a helpless situation. The other thing that I found interesting, the commonality between Nakia, the documentary, you had a comedian in your documentary.
Yes.
And Howard, in your film, you were a comedian and you were using that platform to talk about your issues. And oftentimes, if y'all can speak to this about how comedy is used as a defense mechanism when it comes to dealing with pain.
Absolutely. I think that coping mechanisms in general are something that people almost have to cling to in order to just get by, just to make it to the next day. So especially with Man Listen, one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to go and bring Remo into the film is because I knew he was going to bring into the space. Here we are having these difficult conversations with, some of these men had never met each other before that were in the group conversation. We needed somebody that was going to be able to break the ice of a very heavy room and allow people to feel comfortable at the same time. We did a lot of things to try to make them feel comfortable, such as minimizing the presence of women. It was just myself and two other of my crew that were women present. The majority of people in that room, in that space, were men. We wanted them to be able to have those honest conversations. And sometimes comedy, although it makes light of situations, it is a way that people can use to kind of deal with things and know, oh, wow. And you hear it in the film where some people say, man, I thought I was the only one that went through that. It's same thing with, the alcohol abuse and drugs, and some people were becoming addicted to sex. There are different ways that people may cope and cling on to things that they feel is important to just be able to make it to the next day. But with comedy, at least there's a ray of sunshine that can be used versus a constant dark cloud.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else you want to talk about that, Howard, your character and the comedy scene?
Yeah, I think mine was just like you just said, like he just used that as his coping mechanism. But, I showed it in a different way, whereas it boiled up for so long, and everything he was making jokes of was stemming from a real life place in his life. And he kind of just bursted. But I see that a lot with comedians. I used to go to comedy shows and see some of these people telling these jokes, and sometimes I would just listen and I would just know that some of those jokes they were saying, like that was too real to just make up, So to me, as just an artist, I would listen to that, and it would strike me because I was like, that's a very vulnerable thing to be doing, to just have people, to make people laugh. And I just always appreciated that. So I wanted to like show that in my story too.
Yeah, it was eerie too. It was like, okay, this is gonna be funny because at the beginning people were laughing, and then it got really dark towards the end.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the character in all of the short films had a lot of complex trauma going on. I would have to say, from the way I was looking at the films, a lot of just layers of things happening, and there was no help or no accessibility, and it may have been that one connection that may have gotten the person to the next day.
Yeah,
go ahead.
like for myself, I think the worst experience was what people used to say to me. I think the illness itself, it wasn't. Looking back now, it wasn't. There's nothing I could do about it, but it's what people say, right? And when I had to go to a psychiatrist for a year and a half, that was tough because I'm 14, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I'm not, I don't have a mental health problem. But at that time, at 14, I was thinking, I'm not mad, which is not the right thing to say. I'm thinking, I'm not mad, right? And I didn't know how to act. Like, do I talk a lot? Do I keep quiet? Because at that hospital, they have like prisoners as well, right? People who are being, prisoners who are being assessed for their mental state, like people from prison. And I'm sitting next to these people and I'm thinking, but I'm not like that, So it was, there was some trauma involved, but I think I got over it once I knew what my issues were.
And like I said before, in your film, the thing that stood out to me was your support system. Regardless of all the things, your parents appeared to be really supportive. They were really trying. Oftentimes, when I work with kids, that's not there.
Right.
You can give the parents suggestions, but they still may not, because of whatever they have going on, they may not take the child all different places to find out what's happening. But it seemed like your parents never gave up. And they were trying everything. They tried the traditional doctors, and they tried your cultural, the doctors and that sort of thing. They were trying everything.
Yeah, I think we tried everything. I think the film obviously is 10 minutes long. It doesn't sort of reflect on everything, on a lot of experiences. I think I laugh about them now. Some of them are quite scary, But yeah, my parents did try a lot of things. Even like my because they were like with neighbors, and church friends, and so they would come and suggest things. When someone is always in your parents, I just thought someone's always in my parents' ear, and I could hear it. Someone would just turn up and say, "We've come to pray for Lawrence," and I couldn't say no. They would do this.
Did you feel like a burden?
Huh?
Was it times did you feel like a burden at times?
Yeah, I thought it was, because I think it was, if you try so many things and nothing works, you feel like, well, that's it then, but people will still try. They will still try. And I think when I went to, because I went to boarding school, because my parents put me in boarding school to sort of shield me from, I don't know, maybe it wasn't a good plan, but I think they tried to keep me away from everyone else, like a smaller community in a school. That's why I went with my friends. So it's okay. I'm trying to find the best way to sort of describe it. But I think they were trying a lot of things to because my parents were not well off, right? And it was such a struggle to keep me in that expensive school. But they thought it was a good sort of to take me away from,
the drug.
Yeah.
They probably didn't want you to get hurt or bullied, or because it seemed like you probably didn't know when these things were going to happen, these episodes.
Funny enough, I was never bullied about it. People were scared of me because, like, if you say you can hear voices and smell things and things like that, right? Where I come from, there's something wrong with you. People are, they think demons, they think witchcraft. So people tend to be scared of it, you know what I mean? People tend to stay away from, because there's something, they don't want to mess with you because maybe you're possessed by something. So people tend to stay away. Yeah.
So, Nakia, what inspired you to do Man Listen?
I think it was, for me, it's always part of the plan of broadening the conversation. We still have more topics and film documentaries that will come along with this theme as far as mental health in the African American community. From doing Sis You Okay, I also wanted to make sure that we focus solely on men the same way that we did solely on women and the African American community, because of the fact that it's so taboo to have these conversations. But in 2020, now we're coming to a place where this is something that's welcome to have a conversation and know, okay, maybe all this time I wasn't just, in my mind, or whatever, just going crazy or what have you, because young men, young boys are taught to man up at a very young age. They might be 5 years old, and if their father figure leaves the house, that mother figure a lot of times are man up, don't cry, you gotta do what you have to do. And what that triggers for a lot of people, not saying that's a situation for everyone, but what it does trigger in a lot of people is this space where they feel like they are not allowed to have the feelings and emotions that are coming along with what's happening to them as they grow. And for one of the one of the people that we had in the film, he was raped by an older woman. And he, because of the way that he was raised, it was like, okay, well, it's men, for young men, sexual interactions are very much more welcome than it is for young women. So he knew it was wrong, but he was like, okay, well, I guess, these are emotions I'm just supposed to deal with and keep it moving. But inside, he was internalizing a lot of things that he did not know how to have conversations with because it was not welcome. So now is absolutely the time to make sure that we are opening the door, holding space, having these conversations, making people feel like it is okay. The stories that we have, and we actually wrapped the film and was contacted by someone that really wanted to be a part. And so there's a couple of interviews that are individual in there. This was a situation where it was just bursting with stories from men in our community. They're saying, no, I want to talk. I need to talk. I have to have this conversation. Stories of suicide. Literally people coming in the door saying, yeah, I slashed my throat multiple times in my life. This is not something that you hear in our community, not because it's not happening, simply because that conversation is not welcome. And it's time for us to change that narrative.
Absolutely. For those of you all who don't know, Nakia, she did a documentary called Man That Don't Man. What is it? Man, what is it, Nakia? Man Listen.
Yes, Man Listen is one
She
for
did two different documentaries. She first did Sis, Are You Okay? That was women in mental health, and Man Listen, it was men in mental health. And I've seen both of them. What would you say are the fundamental differences that you picked up on between the men and the women as far as mental health is concerned?
It's very interesting because in the when filming the women's version, they were more open, and when we did their individual takes, and for the men's version, they were more open in the group setting. So it was something, when we got to the individual interviews, sometimes it was like pulling teeth. But once they got around other men that had the same, that they realized, wait a minute, and for the group setting, they had never met these people for the most part. They opened up so quick and realized, okay, I'm not alone. I'm in a safe space. I can have these conversations. And for the women, I think that for us, when we can have a conversation as a woman, and it's just me and one other person or what have you, we're more likely to go see a therapist as African American women than African American men are, which is a reason why those group conversations are absolutely necessary. So I think for both films, seeing how the differences and how open each group was, and making sure that we made them comfortable enough to do, say as much as they possibly, as much as they felt comfortable saying, was kind of that eye opener. Even now with Sis You Okay, it's had legs of its own. It's gotten to the point where on Amazon it's up to about 10,000 views a day. So these are, again, these are conversations that are necessary. They have to happen. And, you know, just to be able to be one of the people that's able to facilitate that unashamed and allow the conversation to go where they may, it's absolutely one of the best things that I could have possibly done with my life. This is
Oh,
always
wow.
about the message and not about anything else. The message has to be heard.
Wow. That's awesome. Another thing I want to bring up that was in two of the films that I saw, the complexity of sexuality. Y'all want to talk about that? That was definitely in Sick Boys Die Alone and in Buck.
Yeah.
Want to talk about that? Who wants to take that? Cause that's a other layer
Mm-hmm.
that's not talked about.
Well, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I would just say, America has this culture that is, patriarchal. It's homophobic. It's puritanical. So I think a lot of people are already shamed for their sexual desires, their interests, even if they're straight. So I think that's just compounded more if you're gay. It's compounded more if you're Black and gay. It's compounded more if you're even outside, like if you have a different identity that people, it took long enough for people to accept gay, and now there are other identities that are calling for respect. And I feel like the American culture is not designed for all those people from the very beginning. So we have to fight for that. And I think doing that your whole life, having to fight, just to exist, just to be, just to want to date, have a nice date, like a straight person can, that takes a toll on your mental health. I mean, it's how could it not? It's just trying to be happy. You might face some kind of abuse.
Yeah.
So can I ask another question in reference to what you just said? Do you think that also not only puts you at high risk of continued mental health problems? What about health issues when you're living, when you feel you have to live in secrecy and hide who you are and your sexuality because of all of these conditions? These are conditionings that we're dealing with that's affecting men and women. Because what affects y'all affects us too.
Well, the thing is that, like, from a healthcare standpoint, if you're forced to live like an abomination, then how do you ever take your longevity and quality of life seriously? And on top of that, if within that kind of complex of abomination, there is also this thing of like, well, it comes to a point where it's like with a disease like HIV and AIDS, right? A huge part of prevention has to do with self-worth. You have to care enough about yourself to take your medication. You have to care enough about yourself to prevent being infected in the first place. So if you've been kind of born to dislike yourself, like a lot of Black gay men are, right? You have a church that is really wrapped up in this gospel of abomination, that there's something inherently evil and wrong with you, then not only do you have an issue loving yourself, but then when you're making love, the other person you're dealing with to a certain extent is kind of painted with that abomination brush. So you have hurt people drawing to each other, hoping to fix one another without ever really having that one conversation from the community that says, you know what, actually, you are worth something. You matter. You have value. You're not something that needs to be shuttled off into the secret, right? You're somebody who has worth and who we need. A lot of young Black gay men don't feel like they're necessary to the community. And as a result, they take risk.
Absolutely.
I would also say, just to jump on what Elegant said, it's going to take more to address these issues than, abstinence programs, which is what my generation grew up with, and in the Bush era. And also just, I see very basic sexual prevention measures that I think we need more than. We need to see more than just a bowl of condoms on a desk.
Yep.
That's not going to create self-worth, because people walk right by that bowl. It's you have to start by engaging the individual, not just saying wrap it up. That's very basic. We have to go deeper than that and figure out why aren't they being worn in the first place, which is a self-worth issue.
Okay, well, speaking of self-worth is taught. It starts in the home, right? Yes, it can be developed over time, but to get a clear sense of self-worth, it literally starts in the home. I think with modeling. Who are your models? A lot of our models didn't have, meaning parents or caretakers did not have a lot of self-worth. We didn't know it, but they didn't. And then also they are under the same conditionings that we are. And actually it was worse because of their generation. So the same patriarchal concepts, they pass it down. So it has you questioning yourself. Like, well, if I don't fit into this box or this thing, that means I am other than, and I feel bad about myself. Who do I go to when I feel different from everyone else?
Well, it's also like the post-traumatic slave disorder of it all, right? Like, we come, African Americans, being caught up in this horrible, horrible tragedy called slavery. Procreation is a part, it's lucrative, right? Every heterosexuality becomes something that it generates wealth for the ones who owned us at one point in history. And then after that, it generates, it's like the way I look at it is, in a culture where you're never guaranteed of anything. You're not guaranteed to actually dismantle white supremacy. You're never guaranteed to actually have freedom. So to a certain extent, survival becomes the most like revolutionary thing you can do. Black love and Black children, Black heterosexuality becomes ground zero for any sort of like concept of what a revolutionary possibility could be, right? So that Black homosexuals, Black lesbians, Black trans people are seen to some degree as like race traitors, right? They're treated as people who are not in on the necessity of survival, the necessity of procreation, to say, you know what, white man, if you're gonna kill us, we can still make babies, and you can't kill you won't stop killing us. Since you won't stop killing us, we'll keep making life. And as a result, people who are seen as not being a part of the procreative solution are seen as just trash, totally unimportant. And it's not true. This is slave mentality. This is something that has been bred into us, to believing that our only value is in our ability to create more Black life. There's so much more to Black life than procreation.
Yeah.
Another thing, we talk about creating Black life. What about us having value in sustaining Black life, right? Yeah. Help with this deconditioning of the way we are thinking. That's how we sustain Black life, by doing the work that we're all here doing.
Yes,
absolutely.
All of our lives, black, gay, straight, all the whatever other label you want to put on it, it matters, right? Another thing I want to get into is, what do you all think about? Do you think it's a barrier when it comes to having this full discussions amongst men? Are there barriers with cis straight men and cis gay men? Are there barriers? Sorry to throw all those labels, but do those barriers play into these dynamics?
You know, I think one of the big barriers for there is like distrust, you know, and maybe on both sides, because on one side, you know, it's like there's this assumption that gay men are predators. So, you know, cis straight men don't want to be even exposed or around it publicly. They don't want they don't want to be guilty by association, and they don't want to be they have this fear of some kind of sexual assault. You know, all of that patriarchal like dominance that straight men assert over women. They're afraid that gay men are going to do that to them, and then so for gay men, you know, I feel like there's a distrust of like safety. It's like, how can I know that what I say won't be used against me? How do I know that I won't be in physical danger, you know, during or after this conversation? How do I know you're not going to try to wreck my life, you know, or blackmail me, you know? So people see this, and that's what causes people to stay in the closet. You know, that's what causes people to engage in like high risk DL activity, you know, because there's just a lack of trust that you actually be safe being yourself.
I think this reminds me of I think I'll talk about my experiences in Zimbabwe, right? Where the president, who called himself the number one, you can say, you can even call me the Hitler of Africa, because he was a massive homophobe. I think I made a film about it before. because what it is, right? He was someone, he was a Catholic, right? And he grew up in the church and all of that, right? But I think what happened is it was heavily influenced by colonialism, right? The white people came and then created this structure and say this is bad. This is because they were gay. They were always gay people in my community before, right? In our society before, and then they came in the 1880s, during Victorian times, and defined what say what a man is or what a woman is. They defined it, right?
Wow.
And that played a large role in the next 100 years, right? Because growing up myself, I did not know there was a thing called a gay person, because we had censorship, right? Nothing in the films, nothing in music, nothing in books, because everything was censored. So when the conversation started in the 90s, we were like, "What, gay people, man?" You know what I mean? Like, right? So that, I think the influence, like you're saying, like Elegance was talking about slavery, right? For us, it is like I can say in the African context, it is colonialism, right? How they sort of influenced the way we think, the way our attitude to like they say to sexuality, I guess. So yeah, there's a huge role that they played, a destructive in that manner.
So you all, so there are some barriers that, in my opinion, need to be broken down.
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is that Black and brown men are affected by the same society globally, regardless, right?
But
So,
I'm sorry, I just want to jump in. Cis Black men, we all need to accept that there is that most people, when it comes to sexuality, exist somewhere between the binary of heterosexual and homosexual. And I think Black men in America, and Black men in Zimbabwe and all over the world, wherever these white people have gone about and told this lie of creating Western civilization, that created Western civilization. Cis, if we're going to break down the barrier, I think a lot of cis Black men who consider themselves so straight, they're threatened by gay men, because gay men kind of push them into a place where they might have to be more honest about what the truth of their sexuality is. Not to say that they're gay like me, but it's way more complicated. Sexuality is way more complicated than, whatever type of Lego combination of holes and things. You know what I mean? There's so much more going on than what fits in what hole, right? And I think all of us need to have much more healthy, gray area conversations about what sexuality is for us as individuals. And then that can give us the strength to start to deconstruct the powers, the colonial powers, the enslaving powers, whatever those powers are, that keep trying to make us fit into these boxes that only exist to perpetuate free market economies. You know what I'm saying? This is not innate to us. None of this is innate to us.
Yep.
All of this is constructed for the sake of spreading goods from one part of the world to another part of the world with as much predictability as possible.
Control.
Mm-hmm.
If I can control, it's like we're a science experiment.
Yes.
If I can control, then I can move things, like you said, along for my own good. And the other thing I want to add, and I don't want to generalize. You're right, sexuality is on a spectrum. It's rare somebody's super straight, super gay, right? It's on a spectrum, and we need to start exploring that. But it also, when we don't, it contributes to cis straight men, some of them, I want to be clear on that, sexually violating other men or trans women.
Yeah.
It contributes to that.
Certainly.
This whole not dealing with their own issues around sexuality, going out and being violent towards others. It's aggression.
They do it to cis women too.
Yeah, absolutely. And cis women. So we have 10 minutes left, and I want to kind of wrap up with some solutions. And I want to point one thing else out that I saw is a thread across majority of the films, was anger. Like the only emotion expressed, anger. It was across the board. And in my experience as a therapist, and I see this with all men of all races, is that is the only emotion that is known a lot of times, because it's been conditioned that this is what you do. You act out in an aggressive way. You're not identifying fear, feeling overwhelmed. I am stressed. Nothing else. Is just I'm either okay or super angry, or I just repress everything, and it really affects our mental health. So what are some things what's some solutions? What do men need to start doing to change this narrative and break this cycle? What can men do?
Well, one thing I want to say, not to put this on the men, I want to put this on the system, is that therapy is very expensive. And I think that's a huge barrier to a lot of people even considering it. You know, I can even recall when I was young, you know, and I wasn't even boy, my brother, you know, needed a child therapist. But at the end of the day, my mom, being a single parent, could not afford or have the time to take him. And I think that's a reality that a lot of people face. So, you know, and he's turned out fine now, but, you know, just imagine whatever resources you could have had then was blocked to him because of an economic reason, you know, and then you grow into an adult, you know, you're making minimum wage. I mean, because, like, you know, I'm coming up in 08, you know, right after the economic crash. So it's like minimum wage job, no health benefits, you know, and it's like, so how am I going to afford therapy? How am I going to have time for that? A lot of people my age don't have time or the money or a job with benefits, you know? So it's like that's a huge thing. I think we need to see, you know, make it more affordable. Also, let's see diversification in the therapists. I know there's many Black therapists, but it's just, let's see greater visibility of that. Let's encourage, you know, people to become therapists, you know, educate ourselves, and let's do it as well. You know, that might help with the stigma against doctors, you know, that distrust in general that's in the Black community, you know, seeing more of us in those positions.
It's amazing.
Off of that, I think too, like for those of us that have access to things like therapy or just the knowledge like we do right now to talk about conversations like these, I think it's important like we open it up to our friends and people we know and other people in the Black community, because a lot of people, like you were just saying, don't have access to that. So they're still on the level where they don't necessarily want to talk about that or want to, you know, feel comfortable yet. So a lot of my friends, and I see on Twitter, you know, I scroll now and I'm seeing men and Black women talk about therapy and things like that. And I think it's getting better. So conversations like these and just that education would help people a lot and would help us not just turn to all the anger in the ways we've just been taught all these years. We can like learn more and learn there's other ways to react and help ourselves.
Yeah, I think for me, adding on to what Howard said, I've made a film before about postnatal depression, right? I just look at myself like as a tool for others to tell their stories. Like I'm a filmmaker. I can tell my own story, but I can tell other people's stories as well. I think it's important that we share like true stories of what others are going through. I think things are sort of slightly easier these days with social media. We can sort of push out. I've got so many messages from people who sort of experienced with similar experience like mine, but for different illnesses, and even someone went blind from diabetes, and you know, so yeah. So I think as filmmakers, I think we should be tools for telling other people's stories.
Yeah, creatives.
I think people need to admit, Black people need to have a space to admit their fear, that we've had to be so brave and so strong for so long. And I think in order for things to really change fundamentally, we have to stop pretending like our bravery is not inspired by the sheer terror that we have to stomach living in this society.
The sheer terror living in this society. Yeah, we don't talk about that enough. We're watching it, but I don't think Black men have really, really talked about how this is impacting you all.
It has to take a toll. I mean, almost every day I have to scroll past, you know, a cop video just quickly. I can't even look. I'm
watch
doing
those.
this,
Right.
and I catch like 4 seconds of it, and I'm just like, I don't want to see it, but I have to see it almost every day because people keep sharing it.
Yeah.
And I understand the reasons for it, but it's like I don't know. How can you
And
even
that's
keep
part of the issue,
anymore?
right? The fact that we'll share trauma before we'll share resources for people to be able to heal. That in itself is something that we have to, again, change the narrative around that, make it popular to be okay, popular to heal, popular to be inspired, positive things, fusing that into the society rather than constantly being shown things that are, quite frankly, traumatizing to all of us, and continuing to perpetuate that same trauma over and over and over again on a daily basis.
Oof.
Wow.
So I just wanted to just give a resource out. So I think I mentioned earlier, I co-facilitate a space for Black men to talk, and we have various topics. We were doing it monthly until COVID hit. Then we got on Zoom, and we've been doing it quarterly. But we have an upcoming event coming up on October 4th. It's a Sunday, Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. It's called Black Men in Addiction, and the name of it is Cut to the Chase. I put the IG handle in the link. I would encourage you all to join in. I actually have a guest speaker that's going to talk. He's an addiction specialist, Black man. So that's somebody in the field of mental health that can educate. I'm also a part of a project called Style Effect. We are offering free therapy. So through Avail Counseling. So that's also, if you follow me on Instagram, that's also my website. They're doing online counseling. You don't have to have insurance, but I don't know whether or not you have to live in the state of Virginia. I don't know what the rules are with that, but you can check that out and pass it along to anyone you know. But we're trying to do our part out here in the community because when men heal, we all heal.
Absolutely.
Point blank. Yeah. When you all heal, we got to do this thing together because it's a trickle down effect. And we got to do different. We have to do differently for any child that we influence or have in our lives.
That's right.
That's right.
Right.
So good. Oh my gosh. And I thank you. I honor you all. The work that you're doing is extremely important. I loved each and every film, and please keep creating and telling these stories. That's a part of the work of getting the word out. Oh, social media. Can everyone go around and tell everyone what your social media handles are? How can we find you?
I'm Jovan Element on Instagram, so that's JOVAN Element, and also at Buck Short Film as well. If you want to just stay in touch with the page, Buck Short Film, just for me, Jovan Element. Thank you.
Mine is at Elegance Bratton on Instagram, at Langston Cruz on Twitter, at Buck Short Film. And also, thank you, Afrikana, for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Langston Cruz on Twitter.
Yes.
Clever, right? I was surprised. I was like, wow, I like it.
It's cute.
I'm on Instagram. I'm at HoHow. That's HO.HOWW. And yeah, thank you, Afrikana. This was great.
All right. I'm at Horn Africa because Horn means sea, by the way. So it's Horn Africa. It's Sea Africa. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, but Twitter and Instagram. Yeah.
And I'm Nakia Cherie on all social media platforms. And for my film company, it's Quale Legacy. And it's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We have a Facebook page as well, yes.
I'll be following y'all. So.
Likewise.
Yes, likewise.
This is so good.
Film. I gotta
see these movies. Yeah, these movies sound good.
Y'all films, I was just blown away. Yeah. Like today, I was just sitting like on my couch, just taking notes. It was like I was having a good old time. I canceled plans. My mom, it was like, you have to see it.
Oh gosh, you gonna ask your mama to see it?
Well, yeah, I didn't offer her buck. She's not ready for that. She's not about that life. I don't want to hear her mouth.
You don't know what to be watching that night. You have no idea.
Right. Don't assume now.
Don't assume now.
I know my mom. She talks about WAP randomly, so you can only imagine. Like, have they lost their mind? That's a whole other topic. So that we're signing off. It's been a pleasure. Have a good Sunday, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.